Mr. Roussos, thank you for being here for that interview. Your company helps a wide range of organizations. Which are the most highly regulated sectors in European Union right now?
Well, thank you for coming, first of all. A very interesting question, and thank you for that. Basically, if you are an EU entity, then you are regulated, right? Like an investment firm, a broker, a bank, no matter the size, you are heavily regulated nowadays. After the 2008 crisis, the G20 jurisdictions decided to implement a lot of regulations, directives, in order to get a much better understanding of what's going on in the market. Back in 2008, I remember nobody knew how many CTSs were in the market. Nobody knew what was going to happen if a bank collapsed. So we had a series of of governments actually trying to save banks, utilizing my money, your money, everybody's money, right? And they were being exactly the opposite of proactive. Nowadays in Europe, after 2008, and it's still ongoing, we see tens of thousands of pages of new regulations and directives being implemented. It makes it virtually impossible for small and medium-sized players to cope up with all this regulation. And it also makes it very difficult on the majority of the regulators to keep up, advise the regulated entities what they need to do, in which case. And then there is regulations, especially in the derivative sector or the securities finance transactions, that they also touch like non-regulated entities, such as corporates, in which case all these companies, they also need to implement compliance departments, rules and processes for unknown matters to them.
Are we lived now in a situation of over-regulation?
I think we are. I think it beats the purpose. Regulation is good. What I mean by that? I mean, it's beneficial for everybody, for all market participants, and especially for banks, for the average people in each country, so we do not have another collapse, right? We don't want our money to be utilized to saving financial institutions. We want them to go towards healthcare, education, you know.
Okay, but is this over-regulation right for making the right balance of starting new business and to protect clients and users?
I think no. It's very, very simple. If you see how the market evolves now, especially in the buy side, in 5 to 7 years ago, you could launch a fund with 20, 30 million, and you could make a success story and then be able to get more money, grow your fund. Nowadays, with the compliance costs rising so much, it's not doable. You have, for the small and medium-sized players, all this over-regulation is not helping. There is a way around this, but it's very, very difficult to comprehend and understand. It's too many regulations, too complex. The regulators themselves sometimes seem to be lost, right? And we went from no regulation to over-regulation, stagnating the market. We see millions and millions now leaving the small and, I would say, medium enterprises, especially in the buy side, and going to the big tier 1 banks. How's that helping the economy, the free economy? It doesn't.
Mr. Roussos, on the other hand, the European Union have a plan to support startup companies, especially unicorns, to be more competitive against China and the United States of America big unicorns. Which is the way to make the right balance? What the European Union have to do about that?
Well, depends on the type of the unicorn, right? But we are way, way behind that as European Union versus the States and or China, if you ask me, or even Israel, that's outside the European Union. If you are over-regulating and then you are subsidizing, it's a waste of resources, right? So you stagnate the market from resources from one hand, and then you try to take the money and flow it somewhere else because you, as a regulator, believe that that is a good company and it has good valuation, so we should help it. Let's see what happened with WeWork, right? It was supposed to be the biggest, one of the biggest unicorns, and everything just collapsed within a month. So was the European Union via a government or directly going to subsidize, to help in any way a company like WeWork?
I don't know.
I don't know either.
What do you say? Yeah.
They shouldn't. They shouldn't.
Of course.
There's companies like Uber. So it was one of the biggest unicorns. It still is. Huge company, making no money, getting in trouble in London and having probably their license revoked because I am a licensed driver, but then I have the rest of my family or friends, driving my car. So was the European Union going to fund a company like that? Well, we need to see the rules, obviously, but even if they did, that's wrong. They should let the private sector decide which company needs funding, which company needs help. There's a lot of money to be invested. We've got negative interest rates anyways. So if you and me, we have money in the bank, right, and we get no return whatsoever, we may decide to invest in a new company. Why would the governments enter into that? That's not their business.
Mr. Roussos, what will be the new and upcoming in terms of new regulation in the European Union?
There is a lot of speculation about the convergence of EMIR and, apologies, of MiFID II, MiFIR, and AFMD. When AFMD was introduced, we saw a lot of hedge fund managers trying to get away from that regulation and going under MiFID I, which was not very strict. Now we saw the opposite. MiFID II is very strict. You've got MiFIR touching that as well. So we saw a lot of companies, right, leaving their license as an investment firm and going back to being a regulated fund in the European Union. So the regulators saw that, and they're thinking that they should converge, right, and create a more strict environment. Again, this is changes every 3 to 5 years, a lot of money and resources wasted instead of leaving the companies to invest in better products, in more profitability, into more, I would say, caring about their bottom line. We have them choosing every 3 to 5 years how to avoid the regulation and comparing between two regulations that are tens of thousands of pages. Now, if you're a huge company, if you're a Blackstone, a BlackRock, that can be easy. But for small and medium enterprises, that can be deadly.
Okay, you are here in Sofia to participate in Investor Finance Forum. What will be the main topics in your speech, in your presentation tomorrow?
I will be participating in a panel where we will discuss financial regulation. There is a lot of discussions going on, especially now with the introduction of new jargon like fintech, regtech, legtech. We do believe that the specialized service providers in the regtech, in the regulation technology space, have a lot of ground to actually help all stakeholders in this market. I will give you an example. With all these trade and transaction reporting regimes globally, especially in Europe, you may have an entity that makes a transaction that needs to be reported to multiple regimes with different data points, and all this data is supposed to go to the single national regulator, or ESMA, the European regulator. So the companies, instead of focusing on their core business, let's find a better product, let's get more returns for our customers, let's help our customers, they focus on reporting. So we went from implementation, now everybody chose a tactical solution, if you like. Okay, so this is what we need to report, let's assign 2 people to do that, but then they realize that it's not just a one-time reporting, it's multiple reportings, multiple teams from different, it covers pretty much all asset classes. So they report, the regulators will take time to analyze, process, then they have questions. By the time they go back to the regulated, or even worse, the non-regulated entity to ask a few questions, if there was under MiFIR market manipulation, if under EMIR there was significant counterparty risk, which was not covered by margins, and something went wrong, well, it already happened. So it's very, very reactive. So I envision a place where the RegTech companies, such as the company I work for, Point9, will be in a position to gather all this data in the cloud, and the regulators can access, or internal auditors, if you like, can access on demand.
Your company adopted the cloud solution. How this help to your organization?
We were one of the very first companies to embrace the cloud technologies. We're utilizing AWS, Amazon. Right now, just to give you an idea, within the last 4 years, we went from reporting approximately 1,000 unique trades a day to almost 6 million unique trades a day. A unique trade with all the modifications, the messages, we send something like 50 million trades a day. That's done with a breeze. Amazon is certified in any regulation you would like, so we do not have to be experts in cybersecurity. We do not have to be experts in GDPR. We do not have to make sure that our systems are always up. So we let Amazon do that, and we concentrate on knowing what a company needs to report to the different regulations in a timely and correct manner.
Do you read the news that Germany and the European Union have plans to make the cloud solution to beat Amazon?
Yes, yes.
And what do you think?
Once again, I am against governments trying to become private companies. Yes, we live in a day where Facebook, Google, Amazon, Apple, Samsung, they have huge amounts of data. They control, I would say, pretty much our lives. They pretty much know what I like to buy when I travel, and the same pretty much goes for all of us. Governments are not meant to do that. I would say governments should be regulating, but they should be regulating with a meaning. They shouldn't just regulate for the sake of regulating, right? And instead of trying to fight and break up all these big companies, if you remember, they tried to do something very similar with Microsoft 3 decades ago. Microsoft is still there. Now we have Facebook, Uber, Amazon. In 10, 20 years, our kids could be here, and there will be other companies. So if you cannot fight something, you need to embrace it and try to make it better. By competing, you will not.
Okay, and Mr. Roussos, one last question. In which parts of the world there is a right balance for the financial companies? Not so much over-regulation and good place for starting business?
That's a very good question. I believe that Switzerland is one of the best. If you read all these trade and transaction reporting regimes, and you go under the Financial Stability Board and you read how they progress, immediately you will see Switzerland a little bit behind, and it kind of strikes you at the beginning because the Swiss are efficient. But what they did is what they do is they wait a little bit back. They see the problems of implementing these regulations in America, in Singapore, the European Union, and they take preventive and proactive measures. I will give you an example. If your company here decides to enter into a derivative trade, you need to be an expert to report it. But do you really want to be derivative experts here? If you want just to hedge currency exposure, you don't. This is what the European Union implemented under EMIR back in 2014. A few months ago, they realized the mistake, obviously, and a few months ago, under EMIR REFIT, that changed. The Swiss, they never introduced that. So they said, if a small company, a corporate, a news organization, wishes to trade a derivative, something very simple like an FX forward, I will not have them report this. They don't need this. So you will trade with the bank, let the bank take care of it.
Maybe that's why Facebook chose Switzerland to have the company that create its cryptocurrency, Libra.
Yes, well, Switzerland also, they embraced the cryptocurrency legislation. They are pioneers in that, even though I have my doubts about Libra and what they want to achieve, to be all honest and fair with you, but that sounds like one of the main reasons, yes.
And one final question, do you have clients in Bulgaria? Do you help organization here with your company?
Yes, we have a few customers in Bulgaria. Our clientele is 99% based in the European Union. The reason I'm here is that Bulgaria, even though it's a small market, we feel that it's underserved and not a lot of, let's say, foreign. We are all Europeans, but then, we cannot be based everywhere. That it doesn't get the attention it should get in terms of new technologies. And we believe that there is a good ground here for more and more business to be established, but you need to have the infrastructure, you need the environment. So that's why my presence here these few days.
And what kind of help Bulgarian companies ask you?
Primarily, the questions we get is what's going on in the rest of Europe, right? So we face a certain problem in terms of reporting. It can be the AML, the fifth directive, is what is the business practice in the United Kingdom, in Germany, in Cyprus? And we see that people here, and I see it from the investor forum tomorrow, that I believe there should be more Germans, English, Cypriots, Italians, Maltese to come here and share how do we cope with all these difficulties and help all the stakeholders here, going from the regulator all the way down to every company that trades, whether it's regulated or not.
Okay, thank you for that interview.
Thank you very much for having me.